Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I've got a full tank review for you of the brand new Kirovets-1. This is a tier 8 Soviet premium heavy tank, yes, as if we needed more in the game. And what you really need to know about this tank is it's kind of a lot like an IS-3 with regards to its turret, but its hull is a little bit more like an Object 703. Firstly, I'm going to break down all of the statistics of this brand new tier 8 Soviet premium heavy tank so you can see how it stacks up compared to its competition, and then I'm going to be taking it out onto the battlefield to show you how it performs. This vehicle will be available starting from today in Wargaming's new trading caravan event, which is quite interestingly already popping up in the garage. However, as I'm having to make this tank review ahead of knowing exactly how much it is going to cost, how many are going to be available, I'm not going to be discussing all of that in detail. Go and watch my trading caravan video if you're interested. All I'm going to be doing today is making sure I focus on letting you know whether this tank is worth it in 2022 or in the future if you're watching from whatever year. So I want to compare the Kirovets-1 to the Object 703-2, the 252U, and the IS-3. Immediately we notice that its damage per minute, all of these vehicles, is pretty much the same. It's got a little bit of an advantage over the IS-3 and the 252U, but actually worse than the double barrel, which also has an auto reloader. Immediately, I noticed that the 221mm of penetration strongly suggests to me that this thing is going to, yes, get APCR rounds as standard and high explosive anti-tank rounds with 270mm of penetration as its premium rounds. This means that its ammunition will perform better than the IS-3, at least against flat surfaces, because that one's got APCR as standard, and it will be better than the 252U with that regard as well. So the Kirovets-1, it's pretty much looking like a 703-2 with that regard, although it does have a slightly longer reload time of half a second. Interestingly, the shell velocity on this vehicle is better than the APCR rounds that you would get on the Object 703-2 at 1,400, which makes me think this is a lot more like an IS-3A within that regard then. One thing that sucks about this tank is that it actually has quite a limited ammunition loadout of 30 rounds, and so you're probably going to have to start running out of whatever ammunition you've been using a lot of towards the latter part of the battle. Okay, now onto gun handling, something that Soviet heavy tanks are really not renowned for, or they are renowned but in a negative way. The aim time at 3.1 seconds is actually the best in this comparison, but the 0.45 accuracy is atrocious. Makes the IS-3 look like a sniper, and I would almost consider using an aiming device on this tank if it wasn't for the case that this thing has horrendous gun handling. 0.24 when moving, 0.24 when turning the turret, and 0.14 when turning the turret. Let me correct myself. 0.24 when I'm turning the tank and 0.14 when I'm turning the turret. That is absolutely awful, and you're definitely going to want to use vertical stabilizers on this tank. I'm sure that some mad lads out there will not only use vertical stabilizers, but also use an aiming device on this vehicle to try and improve the horrendous accuracy. As that's what I did with the Object 703-2. I didn't use vertical stabilizers on that tank, but its dispersion values when moving are literally twice as good as the Kirovets. So that's why I don't use vertical stabilizers on the 703-2. On the Kirovets, I might even have to double stack them in a bizarre world, and trust me, that is really not a very good thing. The gun depression on this tank is 5. That's very limited. You're not going to be able to work many ridge lines. Now let's move on to the mobility of the Kirovets. 42 forwards is very good. It's the best in this comparison. Reverse speed of 20. That's phenomenal. I'm probably not going to need to use a turbo on this tank unless I really wanted to make it quick. But I think, yeah, I'd probably drop the turbo on this vehicle and focus on improving the gun handling instead. The power to weight ratio of the vehicle is 15.18, and it gets much better ground resistances than the 252U and the IS-3. And so that means that this thing is actually going to be quite nippy indeed. And we can see it has the best top speed, or should I say effective top speed on soft terrain compared to all of the other vehicles in this comparison. Combine that with an okay turret traverse of 24, better than the 703-2, and an okay tank traverse of 26. Not great, however, compared to the 252 and the IS-3. This thing will be very mobile indeed. If you're still a mad lad and you don't care about that gun handling because you're always going to fight it in close quarters combat, if you do slap a turbo on this thing, oh, it'll be very fast indeed. So let's take a look at the armor on this vehicle. Its hull looks especially like the 703-2. However, its turret doesn't look very good compared to the other tanks in this comparison. And yes, if we get these two tanks side by side, we can see the Kirovets has 140 on its upper plate, 90 on its lower plate, exactly the same as the 703-2, and its effectives will be the same as well. This means that this is a very good hull on this tank with 100mm of side armor and lovely angling down the side. This is the kind of all-purpose heavy tank that will just laugh at your opponents. If you angle at 45 degrees on this vehicle, even the 220mm of penetration this tank has only has about a 60% chance of going through the lower plate and only about a 24% chance of going through the side. This is a heavily armored tank. The turret, however, it's got some issues. We can see that it actually has some weak points towards the top right and the top left, and the very, very top of the tank is overmatchable with 30mm, but luckily, unlike the IS-3, this one doesn't have a weak forehead apart from against 152mm caliber guns. So be warned that if you think you want to sit in front of that 60 TP, they are going to be able to overmatch the top of your tank, a lot like on a 7032, but that really doesn't stop that vehicle. When we compare the turrets side by side, it is a decent turret. How will it hold up against heat? Well, we can see it's pretty darn decent here, especially compared to the heat protection that you get on the 7032 turret. If we turn the turret to the side, however, yeah, that's not particularly brilliant. But all in all, this is a solid tank, especially against equal and lower tier vehicles, but it's not going to do so well against higher tier tanks. To add to this, significant armor on the vehicle, it has a 50 hit point advantage compared to all of the other vehicles, and it also has 10 meters extra view range. That's definitely something to take into account, and while it doesn't mean that it's ever going to have good view range, it definitely means that it is going to be able to see further than all of the other heavy tanks in this comparison. So how would I like to set up the Kirovets? Let's talk about the field modifications. I'm going to be taking all-terrain suspension, I'm going to be taking the accuracy improvement, and I'm going to be boosting up the view range of this vehicle because it's quite unlikely that you are going to be encountering that many artillery in the game recently. And then it comes down to the choice of either a turbo slot or a firepower slot. I'm personally going to be running bounty equipment on this vehicle, and so I'm going to be taking the turbo slot. However, if you're not going to be running bounty equipment on this vehicle, I would recommend taking the firepower slot and then either improving the gun rammer or the aiming device. Now let's talk about equipment briefly. I'm personally going to go with a gun rammer, vents, and turbo, and I'm going to go with a gun rammer, vents, and vertical stabilizers on this tank. I think that is going to be the best way for me personally to set up. However, it will definitely be a toss-up possibly for you between using vertical stabilizers or using an aiming device on this tank, especially when you get the field mods and you have that firepower slot. But anyway, you know what? I think that's quite enough theory crafting. Let's see what the Kirovets does on the battlefield. So as I unfortunately only have 24 hours with this tank before the embargo is going to be released, today I'm going to be playing the Kirovets live on YouTube for this tank review. But that's not really too scary considering I know it's pretty much just the hull of an Object 703 combined with the turret of an IS-3 or a stock IS-3 if you want to say that. So I'm going to be going with the turbo on this vehicle for this matchup because I want to make an aggressive play. I want to take the fight to the enemy team, and I'm going to go straight over the bridge where hopefully I can end up in a position where I can apply some pressure to them. Now the positions that we could take for the Kirovets on a map like this is we could try and push along the west. The real significant issue with pushing along the west here is that you can end up in just a horrendous crossfire in the area that I'm highlighting on the map. So, wow, oh my lord, this thing is very fast for a Soviet heavy. It feels a lot quicker than an IS-3. It feels a huge amount quicker than a Defender, or even in an Object 703 too. Now, of course, to be able to kind of get this speed, I am sacrificing a lot of the gun handling of the vehicle. But we hit that one on the move at least, and we're already starting to apply some pressure on this Progetto. I've managed to bounce 2 of their rounds, so they can only have 1 round left in that tank. And I am going to apply some pressure on this corner. Hopefully I'm not going to get caught by a bunch of heavies as I do this, but you know what? At this kind of a stage of the battle, I feel like it's a risk that I'm willing to take. So I know this Progetto doesn't have any more rounds because I've been counting them. They will have another one probably before I reload, but I feel like I just want to get another round into this Progetto and start to really chomp them down. And wow, I'm already starting to just feel what we can do with the speed on this tank. Speed on your... Oh, that's really unfortunate, but that is very nice. That's the Object 703 hull armor protecting me very well there. I'm going to pretend like I'm locked down. Maybe the Scorpion comes and has another go. And I'm going to lock down the tracks of the Scorpion. He's going to repair. Maybe he thinks he has me caught here. But this is where I say, well, let's play. track him again. He manages to hit me. Unfortunately, I low rolled, which means I'm only a 50-50 to kill him in a single shot, but I should reload before he does here. I'm going to have to kill that Progetto, unfortunately. I wonder if the Scorpion will decide to press me. And this is how I play my Soviet heavies. You know, aggression, use the armor. You hope that the armor works out. You switch shells to an HE shell that you've only got one of in the tank. And you start to side scrape because that's really where you're going to put some tremendous pressure on your opponents. Notice that Wargaming hasn't modeled the rock correctly, and so you finish them off. And just like that, you've gone 1 versus 2. Now, what has enabled me to do that? Just the all-round awesome hull armor on this vehicle. The fact that you can kind of just angle it at about 45 degrees. Sometimes they'll bounce off even your lower plate. We can even see, well, there's a couple of pens there. Yeah, not every time are they going to be bouncing off your lower plate. But that's just what's so good about this Object 703 hull. So I'm trying to get into position where hopefully I'll be able to get a shell in here. I probably shouldn't be exposing my lower plate, but it's okay. Nearly finish off that player. Switch to a heat round. And put a heat round through the lower plate of the T-54 Mod 1, out trading that player. And this is a decent round so far. 2,600 damage for any tank is lovely. I'm going to switch to an HE round here because I think I can be able to make it work. Across the roof deck of this guy. There we go, easy. My heat round probably could have gone in there, but why not? The only problem is now is I don't have an HE round for later. This ELC's trying to go for my lower plate. That's a bit brave, but he's going to be forced around the corner in a second unless he wants to just get farmed by the 3 tanks behind him. Well, I guess he wants to just get farmed by the 3 tanks behind him. Okay, bud. My Samar SM just managed to gracefully make his way down the bridge. That's better than a lot of people would be able to do there. And there's an M2Y behind me. Sorry, an M3Y behind me. So well played. He's got a really good rate of fire. So I could be in a lot of trouble here. Do I think I think I can get out of this. I think I can get out of this. Ho 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 ho. Magical Soviet sides. Protect me then. Well played to you, M3Y. I don't know why you're on full hit points at this stage of the game, with all due respect, in that very powerful Tier 8 Yoke tank. Definitely should have been more involved in the battle while it was still winnable. And that's why I love speed on my tanks. In close quarters combat, did we really need the gun handling here? I guess we missed one shot that we probably would have hit if we'd had vertical stabilizers, but just having the extra speed on this tank allowed us to confidently cross the bridge before losing our armor, or should I say our hit points, to our relatively poor side armor from maybe the opportunities towards the west. This is what you're going to be able to do in this tank. It is an all-round grindy vehicle. Push in, rely on that hull armor to be able to ricochet, at least in matchups like this. Don't expect it to work against your higher tiered opponents. That's not really going to be the one. But I have to admit, having this kind of engine power on this vehicle does feel outrageous. It feels like one of the faster heavy tanks I've played in a while. Kind of has like Renegade-esque speed. Almost, yeah, very similar to a Renegade speed. Now, would I say that the tank is better than the Renegade? I don't know. Obviously, it's got way better hull armor. That's for certain. Definitely better hull armor in this tank. But the issue, I guess, is that while you have the hull armor, you don't really have that Renegade firepower. You've got 1,800 base DPM, whereas the Renegade is packing more like 2,000 or 2,100 even. I know that the Renegade is an absolute little powerhouse with regards to that, but you don't have a weak point on top. So that's pretty nice. I have to admit, I definitely got very premium IS-3 vibes from this tank, but also just oh so darn similar to the Object 703 too. I guess the significant issue is that an Object 703 2 has that double barrel gun, so I could have delivered 2 shots at the same time against either the Borsig or the Progetto in that situation. Nevertheless, we managed to finish second on experience, we finished third on damage, and does it make good credits? Yes, as all premium tanks do. If we take away the 50k from that game, that would have been a 77,000 credit profit battle. Beautiful. Might as well boost them on my free... I'm not on my free-to-play account. I'm probably not going to be able to afford to get one of these on my free-to-play account. I'm on my press account. This tank is so bizarre, ladies and gents, because it's kind of been in the game for blooming ages, and finally Wargaming find a reason to put it in the game. Alright, so in this kind of a situation, I am thinking about dropping out the turbo, but it's such a big map as well. The turbo allows me to make such big, bold plays. But I think I'm going to go for the gun handling here. So I'm going to switch out. And that's the beauty of having multiple builds once you unlock your field mods in a tank like this, is that you can have multiple builds for your maps and your matchups. Do you want to take more gold rounds because you're in a tier 10 matchup? You can do that. Or do you want to take less because you're playing against tier 6 and tier 7 tanks? You can do that as well. Definitely one of the best features in the game. Of course, a luxury that a lot of the stock tanks are not going to be able to achieve, or even tanks that are just grinding up towards the next vehicle. I definitely felt that in the latest free-to-play marathon, that I was really missing my field mods, and I was really missing all of the bells and whistles that you can have, like intuition, for example. Just in that last game, it definitely helped me out a couple of times to be able to get an extra shell in, or maybe even just to save a couple of credits. So yeah, the Kirovets-1. I have to admit, I'm very confident with playing this tank, because I'm just going to play it like an Object 7032, a slightly faster one at that. An Object 7032 that pretty much has an IS-3A's gun, but just doesn't really have all of the fun auto-reloading, and that is the issue. Right into the side. I love the fact that I was able to get into position before. You see all the slower heavies around me, and I tell you what, the M3Y shouldn't ever really be considered to be a slower heavy. You notice how I was in position to be able to hunt the medium tank in this vehicle, and that's without a turbo. Oh, sound detection. That's a very unusual skill. I don't have that because it's not very useful across a wide variety of my tanks. And with the commander being so highly pressured on most vehicles in world tanks, I think you'd have to be pretty crazy to take sound detection. But don't let me judge you. You could go and use it, or you could just, I don't know, turn your headphones up. To be honest, I feel like Wargaming should give sound detection to all deaf players, because I hear the artillery shells coming. And when you think about it, it's kind of unfair that Wargaming just doesn't create a way for players who are deaf to be able to use sound detection for free, perhaps. That'd be pretty cool, because that's the only way that I can really see it being that useful. Otherwise, all you really... Well, I guess when you think about it, it's actually kind of useful from seeing which way the artillery shell is coming from if it completely misses you, because otherwise it needs to either splash you for you to see the exact artillery location. It is a very visual heads up, but I think with a good pair of headphones, you'll easily be able to hear where that shell is coming and be able to invest in other important aspects of your vehicle. So it looks like this Renegade really wants to come after me. That ELC who's going to sit there, it's such an annoying play when light tanks do that, and there's really not much that I'm going to be able to do about it. Part of me wants to try and push the tempo against the Renegade, and the other part of me really doesn't, because he has the rate of fire advantage. This M3Y is telling me to fall back from that position. Okay, here comes the Arty shell. Yay, thank you Arty, I really appreciate it. Oh, baby, 396 into the Renegade, not too shabby. Is he going to come back around the corner? And he should do. Well played, Renegade, because you had the rate of fire advantage, and that's exactly what I was talking about in that last game. You just simply, I mean, well played, Renegade, but you just kind of got out-traded. But then again, I've only got 30 more alpha damage than him. Is that a real good trade for me? Definitely not. Definitely not a real good trade for me. But I do on average 60 more damage to him than he should have done to me. So, not the worst kind of trades, and there are going to be very few, if any, tier 8 heavy tanks apart from, you know, your German side-scraping behemoths that are going to be able to out-trade you in those engagements. I love these APCR rounds as standard, I'm not going to lie. These 1,400 meters a second shell velocity rounds are so easy to snipe at your opponents. And I would genuinely think that I will be able to hit more targets at long range with this gun, even though it's less accurate, than I would be able to hit with a gun that had worse shell velocity. Because you have to give less lead, and there's less opportunity for your opponents to be able to move as well. And just those clean 1,400 meters a second shell velocity APCR rounds on this vehicle will definitely be an advantage. There's no doubt that this tank has better ammunition than something like an IS-3, but because it's got the same ammunition as an IS-3A. The thing is the IS-3A is undoubtedly incredibly slow, and it doesn't have nearly as good hull armor as this. So I think this tank is actually quite an interesting prospect. It's an IS-3A without the autoloader, with better mobility and better hull armor, and also 10 meters extra view range and 50 extra hit points that when you've got the field mods actually goes up to 1,600. So I kind of feel a bit more like a tier 9 from that perspective. Unfortunately, I can have all of these aspects and it doesn't really stop me when there's a tank with like 40%, 45, even 50% camo rating that's just sitting in that location. So I'm just going to remain chill, just wait to see if the enemies are still going to take the fight to us. Luckily, they're all starting to lose a lot of hit points as well, and I don't want to go down to that range where I'm a one-shot. Currently, I'm not a one-shot for anything on the enemy team, and that is a position that I want to keep, because later on in the battle, I might be able to invest those hit points in making plays against their more powerful vehicles. Alright, talking about more powerful vehicles, what's that Stridsvagn S1 and TS5 doing towards the south? Here he comes. I'm going to switch out to a gold round here. I think it'll help me. Really unnecessary when I think about it. I thought the player was going to turn into me there, but he actually didn't. Maybe I can wedge my vehicle up here. This will be a weird shot. This will be a real weird shot. I'm about a pixel away from being able to get him here, but it doesn't matter anymore, as the TS5 is vanquished. So what you're seeing here is hopefully realistic ideas of what the gameplay is like. I'm using a mix of bounty equipment, not bond equipment, and regular turbo on this vehicle. So everything that you see me doing, you can do as well for either a small amount of gold and removing your equipment onto this vehicle with it, or just using your free demounting kit, or alternatively with standard equipment, not too far off to be honest. That ELC is not very well. This tank just feels so solid. It just feels like a real solid tank. Incredibly solid vehicle. I'm enjoying it. Is it like revolutionary gameplay? No. Is this a terrible tank? No, it's really not. If you can't do well in this, then you're not probably playing your Soviet heavies very well, and considering how long Soviet heavies have been in the game. Oh, that was a really good shot. I am going to have to repair. I wanted to just keep him there, making him think that he had the opportunity to get me, but he didn't, and boom. Whoa, 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 the butt of the Renegade coming back to haunt me. I'm going to pretend like I'm getting a shot here, so he actually aims like that. Now we have Captain Emil coming after me. I need heat for the Captain Emil. He probably knows that as well. If this Panther tries to sidescript, I'm going to need APCR for him though, but I definitely need heat for the Emil turret. Oh man, I reckon their artillery is going to clap me pretty hard soon. At least I'm locking down what feels like most of the enemy team right now. Yeah, I got myself into a bit of a hairy situation. I honestly feel if I reverse right now that the enemy artillery is going to kill me. Yeah, he was going to. What's up? What's up, Panther? So Mil's going to try and pressure me now. He's only got one more shot. He might kill my lower plate now. Oh, he doesn't. Oh, nice. My arty got him as well. Beautiful. I know this guy's reloading, so I guess I got to go pressure him, right? I probably got time. Considering he was stunned, that would have added on significant amounts of time to his reload. That Borsig might get me at the back. But at this stage of the game, like, what do I even have to lose, right? Wow, I just tanked a Borsig who's relocated. Oh no, he hasn't really. Well, unfortunately, that means that the Emil's probably going to kill me here, but I guess he isn't. Okay, let's try and get into a safe place for the Borsig here. I would probably, if I was on my... guess I can switch out to an HE round here. Unnecessary. He's got enough... Ah, no, it isn't actually unnecessary. And, ladies and gentlemen, that is it. The Kirovets. One more game and a decent result. My first 2 games in this tank. Now here's the thing, I wouldn't usually do the live gameplay for a review if I felt like the tank had new novel gameplay. This tank does not have new novel gameplay. It is an Object 703-2 with the turret of a stock IS-3 with the gun of an IS-3A. That's what you need to know. And that's not a bad combination when you also add to the fact that it has a little bit extra view range and it has that speed as well. And we're just making very consistent plays. We're not quite top on damage, but we're top on experience there. You know what, let's give it one more go considering the games have been quite quick today. This is Definitely not the most exciting premium tank you're ever going to play in your life. But is it the worst premium tank you're going to play in your life as well? No. Now, is it something to get ridiculously excited for, a bit like people did in Under the Hammer for the AMBT? No, it's really not. The AMBT was the first American auto-reloader, and that had very novel gameplay. Is it something exciting like the Caliban that was just released in the Christmas boxes? No, definitely not. By the way, I'm going to use a turbo here because I believe I have to try and claim the hill as quickly as possible. So I'm going to try and take the fight to the enemy team here. Unfortunately, I got a pretty bad spawn. So this tank is definitely not going to be the most exciting thing ever. Is it still something that the tank collectors will want to get their hands on? Well, frankly, yeah. Even though the tank collectors, honestly, boys, you are literally, if this is an expensive tank and it's really hard to get, you have a better tank in your garage already in the form of the 703-2, at least with regards to fun and maybe novel gameplay. And the only thing that this does is kind of amalgamates a load of other gameplay. Is it more competitive from that perspective? I'm not sure it's actually more competitive from that perspective. Is it terrible? No, it's definitely not terrible either. Alright. Oh, I could be dead here. I could be dead here. I think I should have spent less time talking and more time focused here, actually. Oh, I could be in a lot of trouble here, boys and girls. Could be in a lot of trouble, but you know what I can do? I can try and stop this guy from flanking me. Okay, okay. So the T-44 is firing gold, so he's probably going to wreck me here. Oh, I'm dead. Oh, I'm so dead. Oh, I'm so dead. Oh, I'm so dead. Oh well, I guess I shouldn't have played the third game while talking about it. My fault. Nice play by the T-44, loaded gold and went through the front of my tank. GG, I caught 2 Progetto shells as well. We're going to lose this game because none of my team decided to come into the middle. And unfortunately, we have a lot of our players that should be up on the hill or contesting the hill that weren't in position. Anyway, look, not my finest game when I was talking about consistency there. I feel like I've already shown enough with the Kirovets-1. It has the hull of a 703-2, it has the gun of an IS-3A, and it has very similar IS-3 gameplay. Now, as I know, there are a lot of people who love the IS-3. I would not be surprised if those players will jump on trying to get a Kirovets-1. However, the hull armor's different, the turret's definitely different, but that's probably not that bad of a thing, and the gun is different. I do feel like it's just a better IS-3, but it doesn't have the soul of an IS-3. The IS-3 has been in the game since its inception. The IS-3 has a long, rich pedigree in World of Tanks, and it's a tech tree vehicle that everybody's going to be able to get their hands on for only playing the game for a few days, a week, a month, depending on how fast you're going and what bonuses you have applied to your account. And considering that Wargaming are releasing the Kirovets-1 in a very convoluted way in the trading caravan, where I don't even know if there are going to be lots available on day 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, or if they're all going to just sell out on day 1 for people who were lucky enough to roll for them. It's definitely really hard for me to get behind the Kirovets-1's release. Frankly, it's the kind of tank that may have been exciting if it was released a few years ago, and it really makes no sense that they're releasing the Kirovets-1 now after you've got the Object 703-2 in the game and an IS-3A. Accordingly, the Kirovets-1 is kind of like this premium tank that time forgot. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the statistics of the vehicle are not attractive, but when there's so many other tanks that it's trying to compete with so many different flavors of gameplay, this is about as close as it can get to a reskin or some kind of Frankenstein amalgamation of all of the other vehicles, and the vehicle kind of loses a lot of its novelty, especially when it's being released in such a bizarre system. And while I'm sure the whales out there are going to jump to be able to get their hands on it and do whatever they need to in the trading caravan to be able to achieve that, this is probably one that I would consider to skip out on unless it's very attractively priced and you want to try and get pretty much as close to an IS-3 premium as you can get with, significant advantages in quite a few areas. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for today. Really hope you enjoyed this tank review. If you did and you found it useful, give the video a thumbs up. If you hated it, however, give it a thumbs down. And let me know what you think about the Kirovets-1 in the comments down below. Do you think that it looks like your kind of tank? Do you think that it looks like an absolute behemoth on the battlefield? Or do you think it kind of looks a bit like a tank that time forgot and you're going to invest your money into other areas of the game, if you're going to spend any money on this game at all? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon. And if you're undecided about the tank and you want to see some more gameplay, if I can manage to get my hands on one, and I am going to be live on Twitch as the trading caravan starts, if you want to see all of the excitement, I'm going to be playing it a lot more today on my main account. So hopefully I'll see you there.